The galaxy's most feared fighter promised he would break her bones one by one. 5 minutes later, he was the one being carried out on a stretcher. Look, I have seen a lot of stupid things in my 17 cycles as a combat coordinator on Station Nexus 7. I have watched Blentharian nobles bet their entire fortunes on rigged matches. I have seen Vorkul berserkers tear through reinforced plexisteel with their bare claws. I have even witnessed a Metharian diplomat accidentally challenge someone to a deathmatch because he misunderstood our translation protocols. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day Vricker the Unbroken decided to fight a human. Let me back up a bit, because you need context to truly appreciate the magnificent disaster that was about to unfold. Wreckar was not just any warrior. No. This guy was a legend, a myth made flesh, a walking catastrophe wrapped in scales and arrogance. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, which is impressive even for a Crothian. His species evolved on a high-gravity world where everything wanted to kill you, eat you, or preferably both. Crothians developed thick, armored hide that could deflect most small arms fire. Their muscles were dense enough to bend duralloy bars. Their reflexes were honed by millennia of survival against predators that made our worst nightmares look like cuddly pets. And Wreckar? He was the best of the best. 43 professional fights, 43 victories. 27 of those were knockouts in the first round. The other 16 were because his opponents had the good sense to surrender before he literally killed them. Station Nexus 7's galactic combat arena had become his personal playground, his throne room, his temple to the god of violence that he apparently worshipped. The arena itself was a marvel of engineering. I will give it that. 300 feet in diameter, surrounded by energy shields that could contain a small tactical nuke. The floor was programmable, able to simulate everything from rocky terrain to zero-gravity combat, seating for 12,000 spectators from across the galaxy, all of them screaming, betting, drinking, and generally acting like civilized sapients who had temporarily forgotten what civilization meant. On this particular day, the arena was packed. Word had spread that Wreckar was taking open challenges again. He did this sometimes when he got bored, which was often. He would stand in the fighter's preparation zone, all 8 feet and 600 pounds of him, and dare anyone to step up. The prize? 50,000 credits and bragging rights across 3-star systems. The cost? Your dignity, several bones, and possibly your life, though Wreckar usually stopped short of actual murder. Usually, I was running the betting pools that day, which meant I had a front-row seat to the spectacle. Wreckar was holding court like always, his massive arms crossed over his chest, his tail swishing back and forth in that way Crothians do when they are feeling particularly smug. His hide was a deep crimson, marked with the white scars of 100 battles. His eyes, all 4 of them, scanned the crowd with undisguised contempt. "Come on," he roared, his voice amplified by the arena's sound system. "Is there no one left with even a shred of courage? Has this station become a refuge for cowards and weaklings?" The crowd loved it. They always did. Wreckar was not just selling violence. He was selling theater. That is when she walked in. At first I did not even notice her. She was small, maybe 5.5 feet tall, slim build, wearing what looked like training gear that had seen better days. Her skin was that particular shade of brown that spoke of Earth's endless genetic diversity. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She carried no weapons, no armor, nothing that suggested she was anything other than a spectator who had wandered into the wrong section of the station. But she kept walking, right past the security checkpoints, right past the registration desk, straight toward the arena floor. Said Kelvin, my Regelian assistant, his tentacles quivering with confusion. "Is that a human?" "Looks like it," I replied, already feeling a sense of dread building in my chest. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel about 30 cycles ago, which made them babies by cosmic standards. They were small, soft, fragile things from a moderately dangerous world that nobody really paid attention to. Sure, they bred like xanthian moss and spread across systems with alarming speed, but in terms of physical prowess, they ranked somewhere between planarians and Geffic in the galactic hierarchy of species you do not want to fight, which is to say, near the bottom. Wreckar noticed her about the same time everyone else did. His eyes narrowed, and then he laughed. Oh, how he laughed. It was a deep, booming sound that echoed through the arena like thunder. "Is this a joke?" he called out. "Did someone hire entertainment? Because if this is a comedian, I want my money back." The crowd joined in. Laughter rippled through the stands. Betting terminals lit up with activity as people rushed to place wagers on how quickly this would end. The odds were astronomical. I checked the numbers, 300 to 1 against the human. And that was being generous. The woman, Rebecca Torres, according to the registration that popped up on my display, did not react to the mockery. She just kept walking until she stood at the edge of the arena floor, looking up at Vrecker with an expression that I can only describe as mildly interested, like she was examining a particularly boring piece of furniture. "I accept your challenge," she said. Her voice was quiet, calm, completely at odds with the chaos of noise around her. Vrecker stopped laughing. He tilted his massive head, studying her like she was an insect that had just done something unexpected. You accept my challenge?" "That is what I said." "Yes." "Little human," Vrecker said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Do you have any idea what you are doing? I will break you. I will shatter every bone in your fragile little body. You will be drinking your meals through a tube for the rest of your short life." Rebecca shrugged. "The entry rules say any registered sapient can challenge. I am registered, I am sapient. So either fight me or admit that your tough guy routine is just empty posturing." "Oh." The crowd loved that. The laughter turned into cheers and jeers. Nobody talked to Vrecker like that. Nobody. The Crothian's hide darkened to a deeper red, which I had learned meant he was getting angry. "Fine," he growled. "Your funeral, literally." Rebecca turned to me. "I need to register my bet." "Your what?" "My bet. I assume I can bet on myself?" I blinked all 6 of my eyes. "Technically, yes, but..." "Good. I want to put 5,000 credits on myself to win. Straight victory, not just survival." The arena went silent. 5,000 credits at 300 to 1 odds meant she would walk away with $1.5 million if she won, which she would not. Obviously. But still. "Are you insane?" I asked. She smiled for the first time, and there was something in that smile that made my instincts scream. It was not a nice smile. It was not friendly. It was the smile of someone who knew something you did not. "Just process the bet, please." I did. What else was I going to do? The arena prep took another 10 minutes. Medical teams moved into position. The shield generators powered up with a high-pitched whine. The floor configuration was set to standard combat mode, flat, non-slip surface with impact dampening zones around the edges. Rebecca walked onto the arena floor, wearing the same worn training gear she had arrived in. Rekar entered from the opposite side, and the crowd exploded with noise. He raised his arms, soaking in the adulation, his massive form casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the small human woman whole. I looked at the betting totals one more time. 98% of the money was on Vrecker. The other 2% was apparently from humans who had either too much loyalty or too little sense. The referee, a Kaldorian with enough cybernetic enhancements to survive being near these two, raised his hand. "Fighters ready?" Vrecker cracked his knuckles, each pop sounding like a gunshot, ready to crush. Rebecca rolled her shoulders, bounced on her toes once. "Ready." I leaned forward in my coordinator's booth, my datapad forgotten. This was either going to be the shortest fight in arena history, or the most interesting. The referee's hand dropped. "Fight." The referee held up one hand before either fighter could move. "Standard rules apply. Fight continues until knockout, submission, or medical intervention. Killing blows are prohibited and will result in immediate disqualification and criminal charges. Deliberate maiming will incur penalty fines. Do both fighters understand?" Yes, Vrecker said, waving dismissively. He had not taken his eyes off Rebecca, and his expression was somewhere between amused and insulted. "Understood," Rebecca replied. The referee nodded and backed toward the edge of the arena, but he did not signal the start yet. There was always this moment, this pregnant pause before violence erupted, where fighters sized each other up. Some used it for strategy, others used it for intimidation. Vrecker naturally chose intimidation. He began to circle Rebecca slowly, his massive feet thudding against the arena floor with each step. The sound reverberated through the space like a war drum. "You know what I am going to enjoy most, little human." The sound. That wonderful crunching noise when your ribs collapse, the pop when your joints separate, the wet squelch when— Are you actually trying to scare me? Rebecca interrupted. Or are you just really bad at flirting? Because honestly, I cannot tell. The crowd erupted in laughter. Even I had to suppress a chuckle, and I was supposed to be professional. Vreckar's hide flushed darker. You dare mock me? I mean, you are making it pretty easy. She tilted her head, studying him with that same mildly interested expression. Let me guess, you are going to tell me about all the opponents you have destroyed. Then you are going to flex and roar. Maybe pound your chest a few times. Am I close? The Crothian warrior took a step closer, looming over her. At 8 feet tall, he towered over Rebecca by nearly 3 feet. His shadow completely engulfed her. I have broken warriors twice your size without even trying. I have made champions beg for mercy. What do you think you are going to accomplish here, human? What delusion brought you into my arena? Rebecca yawned. Actually yawned. Oh, I am sorry. Were you still talking? Now, let me explain something about humans and why the galactic community generally considered them to be, shall we say, unimpressive from a combat perspective. It all came down to biology and planetary conditions. Most species that achieved spaceflight came from worlds that were harsh, high-gravity, toxic atmospheres, mega-predators, environmental extremes. These conditions forged species into living weapons. Crothians came from a planet with 1.8 times standard gravity. Vorkuls evolved alongside creatures that could literally breathe fire. Metherians developed on a world where the weather could change from frozen wasteland to boiling desert in a matter of hours. Earth was classified as a Category 4 death world, which sounds impressive until you realize the scale goes up to Category 10. It had slightly higher than average gravity, some moderately dangerous predators, and weather patterns that were energetic but not exceptional. Humans evolved as persistence hunters and tool users, which made them clever and adaptable, but not particularly strong or fast or durable compared to the galactic standard. The average human could lift maybe their own body weight. The average Crothian could lift 5 times their body weight. Humans had no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no redundant organs. They were soft and squishy and vulnerable to pretty much everything. A solid punch from a Crothian could literally cave in a human skull. So naturally, everyone assumed this fight would last about 15 seconds. Vrecker clearly shared this assumption. He stopped circling and planted himself directly in front of Rebecca, close enough that she had to crane her neck to look up at him. Here is how this is going to go, human. I am going to charge you. You are going to try to dodge, because that is what prey does, but you will not be fast enough. I will grab you, lift you up, and slam you into the ground hard enough to knock the air from your pathetic little lungs. Then, while you are gasping and crying, I will pick you up and do it again and again, until you remember your place in the natural order. Huh? Rebecca said. That is a lot of steps. Have you considered just being good at fighting instead? Vrecker's roar shook the arena. It was a primal sound, full of rage and hunger and the promise of violence. His tail lashed behind him, his claws extended from his fingers, each one 6 inches of molecularly sharpened bone. The crowd went wild, thousands of voices screaming in anticipation. Rebecca stood completely still, her hands hanging loose at her sides, her expression unchanged. Inside his head, Vrecker was already planning his victory celebration. He would end this in one move. One charge, one grab, one slam. The human would crumple like paper. The crowd would chant his name. He would collect his appearance fee, plus whatever additional credits came from the betting pools. Maybe he would even be merciful and not break too many of her bones. Just enough to teach her a lesson about challenging her betters. 15 seconds, he thought. 20 if she is lucky. The referee raised his hand again. Fighters, are you ready? Vrecker dropped into a combat stance, his massive frame coiled like a spring. Every muscle in his body tensed, ready to explode forward with devastating force. Ready. Rebecca shifted her weight slightly, her feet shoulder-width apart, her knees barely bent. She looked relaxed. Too relaxed. Like someone waiting for a transport, instead of someone about to get hit by several 100 pounds of angry Crothian. Ready. The crowd's noise reached a fever pitch. I could see people in the stands literally vibrating with excitement. The betting terminals were going crazy as last-minute wagers flooded in. The odds had somehow gotten worse for Rebecca. 400-1 now. The referee's hand dropped. Fight. Rickar launched himself forward, with a speed that seemed impossible for something his size. The arena floor cracked under the force of his push-off. His arms extended, claws gleaming under the arena lights, reaching for the small human woman who had dared to insult him. Rebecca did not move. For one frozen moment, everyone watching thought she had simply accepted her fate, that she had realized the magnitude of her mistake and given up. Then, at the last possible second, she shifted. It was not a big movement, just a slight rotation of her hips, a small step to the left, a subtle duck of her head. But it was enough. Wrecker's massive form sailed past her, his claws slicing through empty air where she had been standing a fraction of a second earlier. His momentum carried him forward, unable to stop, and he crashed into the arena floor with a sound like a small explosion. The crowd gasped. Rebecca turned to watch him scramble back to his feet, and that smile appeared again. That dangerous, knowing smile. "Oops," she said sweetly. "Did you trip?" Wrecker's roar of fury could probably be heard 3 decks away. This, I realized, was going to be interesting after all. Wrecker pushed himself up from the arena floor, his hide now displaying patches of darker crimson that spread across his shoulders and neck. In Crothian physiology, that color change meant one thing: embarrassment mixed with rage. A truly dangerous combination. "Lucky," he snarled, spitting the word like a curse. "That was lucky." Rebecca said nothing. She just stood there, hands still loose at her sides, weight balanced evenly on both feet. Waiting. The Crothian warrior charged again, but this time he was smarter about it. Instead of committing fully to a grab, he threw a heavy right hook aimed at Rebecca's head. The punch came in fast, a blur of scaled flesh and extended claws that would have decapitated a lesser being. The air actually whistled as his fist cut through it. Rebecca leaned back, and the punch passed so close to her face that her ponytail swayed from the displacement of air. Before Wrecker could retract his arm, she stepped inside his guard and drove her fist into his ribs. 3 times. Quick, sharp jabs that landed with precise snapping sounds. Then she was gone again, dancing back out of range before he could counter. Wrecker looked down at his side, confused. The punches had landed clean. He had felt them, but they had not hurt. Not really. It was like being hit by a child. What was this human thinking? "Stand still," he roared, advancing on her with more caution now. "No, I do not think I will," Rebecca replied, circling to his left. The crowd was still cheering for Wrecker, but there were new sounds mixed in now. Confusion, uncertainty. A few scattered laughs that were not entirely at Rebecca's expense anymore. The betting terminals showed a small but noticeable uptick in people hedging their bets, putting small amounts on the human just in case. Wrecker threw a combination this time, left jab, right cross, followed by a sweeping kick that should have broken Rebecca's legs if it connected. He was faster than most Crothians, his strikes honed by years of professional combat. Each blow had enough force behind it to dent armor plating. Rebecca avoided the jab by stepping to the side. She ducked under the cross so low that her knee almost touched the ground. The kick whished over her head, and as Wrecker spun from the momentum, she popped back up and hit him again. This time in the kidney area if Crothians had kidneys, 4 rapid punches, each one landing in almost the exact same spot. Wrecker stumbled forward, more from surprise than pain. He whirled around, his tail whipping behind him in a move designed to catch opponents off guard. Rebecca jumped over it. Actually jumped, tucking her legs up like she was skipping rope, and landed in a crouch 3 feet away. "How are you doing that?" Wrecker demanded. His breathing was heavier now, not from exertion but from frustration. "How are you moving that fast?" "I am not moving fast," Rebecca said, and she was barely breathing hard at all. "You are just moving predictably." That did it. Wrecker abandoned strategy entirely and went full berserker. He charged forward with a flurry of strikes, his arms moving so quickly they became a blur of claws and scales. High, low, middle, combinations that would have overwhelmed any opponent through sheer volume and ferocity. The sound of his attacks cutting through air filled the arena like a violent percussion section. Rebecca wove through the assault like water flowing around rocks. She bobbed, weaved, slipped, and ducked. Every strike missed by inches, sometimes less. And each time Wrecker overextended, Each time his momentum carried him a fraction too far, she was there. A quick jab to the throat, a hook to the floating ribs, a sharp cross to the solar plexus. None of the hits seemed to do much damage individually, but she kept hitting the same spots over and over. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were watching in stunned silence, broken only by the sounds of combat. The impact of Ricar's strikes hitting nothing but air, the sharp snap of Rebecca's knuckles finding their marks, the increasingly labored breathing of the Cruthian warrior. I checked my data pad. 3 minutes had elapsed. 3 minutes, and Wrecker had not landed a single clean hit. Kelvin leaned over my shoulder, his tentacles quivering with nervous energy. This should not be possible. The speed differential alone. I know, I muttered. And the strength ratio. I know. Then, how is she? I have no idea. Down in the arena, Wrecker was starting to realize he had a serious problem. His attacks were getting sloppier, born from frustration rather than technique. He was used to overwhelming opponents quickly, ending fights before they began. But Rebecca refused to be overwhelmed. She refused to be intimidated. She refused to do anything except keep moving, keep hitting, keep making him look foolish. Wrecker decided to change tactics. If he could not hit her with precision, he would hit her with area of effect. He planted his feet, drew back his massive fist, and punched straight down at the arena floor with every ounce of strength he possessed. The impact was tremendous. The reinforced floor cracked, sending a spiderweb of fractures spreading outward. The shockwave rippled through the arena, designed to knock Rebecca off her feet, to stun her, to finally give him an opening. Rebecca had already jumped backward. She landed in a three-point stance, completely balanced, while debris and dust settled around her. "Nice try," she said. "Do you want to take a break? You look tired." "I am not tired," Wrecker bellowed, though his heaving chest suggested otherwise. "I am just getting started." He charged again, roaring, his arms spread wide to prevent her from dodging to either side. This time he would corner her against the arena wall. This time she would have nowhere to run. Rebecca ran straight at him. The crowd gasped. This was it. She had finally made a mistake. There was no way she could. She dropped into a slide, her body going low and fast across the smooth arena floor. She passed between Wrecker's legs, so close that her shoulder brushed against his ankle. As she slid past, she reached up and punched him right in the tail base, a spot where Crothian nerve clusters were particularly sensitive. Wrecker howled in pain and surprise, his momentum still carrying him forward. He tried to stop, tried to turn, but he was moving too fast and the floor was too slick from the dust of his previous attack. He hit the arena wall. Not just hit it, crashed into it. With the full force of 600 pounds traveling at full sprint, the energy barrier flared bright blue, absorbing the impact and preventing him from actually breaking through, but the collision was still devastating. Wrecker bounced off the wall and landed on his back, his eyes glazed, his limbs twitching. The referee started moving forward, hand raised, ready to call a knockout. But Wrecker groaned and rolled onto his side. He was not out. Dazed, certainly. Humiliated. Absolutely. But not out. He pushed himself up onto his hands and knees, shaking his head to clear it. When he looked up, Rebecca was standing 10 feet away, her hands on her hips, waiting patiently. "I have to ask," she said conversationally, "do you actually practice, or do you just rely on being big and scary?" Wrecker's response was not verbal. It was a guttural sound of pure fury that came from somewhere deep in his chest. He rose to his feet, wobbling slightly, his eyes now locked on Rebecca with an intensity that would have made most beings flee in terror. The crowd was going insane. Half of them were chanting Wrecker's name, urging him to crush this upstart human. The other half were screaming for Rebecca, caught up in the impossible spectacle of a human holding her own against a Crothian champion. I looked at the fight clock. 5 minutes down. I looked at Wrecker, who was bleeding from a cut above his eye ridge, breathing hard and visibly frustrated. I looked at Rebecca, who looked like she had just finished a light warm-up exercise. The betting odds were shifting rapidly now. 300 to 1, 200 to 1, 150. People were starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, they had underestimated the human. Wrecker wiped the blood from his face and settled into a proper fighting stance for the first time since the match began. No more showboating. No more assumptions. This was a real fight now. Rebecca's smile widened. "There we go," she said. "I was wondering when you would start taking this seriously." Wrecker had fought enough battles to know when it was time to adapt. Brute force was not working. Intimidation was not working. Speed alone was not working. So he fell back on the fundamentals that had made him a champion in the first place: technique, reach advantage, and strategic positioning. He began to work his jab. Not wild haymakers, but controlled, measured strikes that used his superior arm length to keep Rebecca at bay. Each jab extended nearly 4 feet from his shoulder, creating a barrier of scaled fist and razor-sharp claws. He mixed in low kicks aimed at her legs, trying to limit her mobility, trying to take away that infuriating speed advantage. For the first time in the fight, it seemed like Wrecker had found an answer. Rebecca was forced to move backward, circling, looking for openings that were not appearing as readily. The crowd roared its approval. This was more like it. This was the Wrecker they knew. Finally learning. "Are we?" Rebecca said, but there was a note of approval in her voice that made it less of a taunt. Wrecker did not respond. He was focused now, his 4 eyes tracking every micro-movement Rebecca made. He threw another jab, then another, establishing a rhythm. When Rebecca tried to slip inside, he was ready with a short elbow strike that forced her to abort and reset. But then Rebecca changed her approach too. Instead of trying to evade the jabs entirely, she started deflecting them. A subtle parry here, a redirect there, using minimal movement to send Wrecker's strikes off target by just enough. And each deflection brought her 1 step closer, 1 inch nearer to that dangerous zone inside his reach. Wrecker threw a straight right, putting real power behind it. Rebecca slapped it aside with her left hand and stepped in. Before he could retract, she was inside his guard, too close for him to use his reach advantage. She drove an uppercut into his ribs, then a hook to his liver area, then another uppercut that caught him right under the chin. The combination was fast, brutal, and perfectly placed. Each strike built on the previous one, setting up the next, flowing together like a choreographed dance of violence. Wrecker's head snapped back from the uppercut, his vision blurred for a moment, and in that moment, something clicked in his brain. A realization that made his blood run cold despite the heat of combat. He might lose this fight. The thought was so alien, so completely outside his experience, that for a full second he just stood there processing it. Him, Wrecker, the unbroken, undefeated in 43 professional bouts, feared across 3-star systems, might actually lose to a human. Rebecca did not give him time to dwell on it. She pressed forward with relentless aggression, her fists moving in combinations that Wrecker could not seem to predict or counter. Every time he tried to establish distance, she closed it. Every time he tried to clinch and use his strength advantage, she slipped out before he could get a solid grip. Wrecker's breathing was becoming labored. His chest heaved with each breath, his lungs working overtime to feed oxygen to muscles that were starting to burn. Crothians had excellent stamina under normal circumstances, but this was not normal. This was constant motion, constant defense, constant adjustment. He had never had to work this hard in a fight before. Rebecca, meanwhile, was still breathing easy. Oh, she was sweating now, her training gear showing dark patches across the shoulders and back, but her breathing remained steady and controlled. Her movements had not slowed at all. If anything, she seemed to be speeding up. "How?" Wrecker gasped between exchanges. "How are you not tired?" "Cardio," Rebecca replied, ducking under a hook. "You should try it sometime." She hit him with a liver shot that made his entire left side light up with pain. Wrecker grunted, his arm dropping instinctively to protect the injured area. Rebecca immediately switched targets, driving a cross straight into his snout. Blood exploded from his nostrils, painting his chest scales crimson. The crowd was on its feet now. Every single being in the arena was screaming, the sound combining into a wall of noise that vibrated through the station's hull. Half were chanting Rebecca's name. The betting terminals had gone completely haywire, odds swinging wildly as money poured in from both sides. Wrecker backed up, trying to create space, trying to catch his breath. His legs felt heavy, his arms felt heavier. Every part of his body was telling him to stop, to rest, to quit before permanent damage was done. But his pride would not let him. He was Wrecker the Unbroken. He did not quit. He did not surrender. He would rather die in this arena than admit defeat to a human. He roared, more from desperation than confidence, and launched himself forward one more time. This would be his power play, his overwhelming assault. He would put everything he had left into one final combination that would end this. Right cross, left hook, right uppercut, spinning back fist. Each strike thrown with bone-crushing force, each one capable of ending the fight if it landed clean. Rebecca slipped the cross by a hair's breadth, ducked under the hook so low her knee touched the floor, swayed back from the uppercut, letting it pass inches from her nose, and when the back fist came around, she did not dodge. She caught it. Wrecker's eyes went wide with shock. Her small hands wrapped around his massive wrist, stopping the strike's momentum completely. For one frozen moment, they stood locked together, Wrecker's fist trapped in Rebecca's grip. Then Rebecca twisted, using Wrecker's own force against him, and threw him, a human, through a Crothian. Wrecker flew through the air and crashed onto his back, the impact driving what little air remained in his lungs out in a painful wheeze. Stars exploded across his vision. His body screamed for oxygen that would not come fast enough. He tried to get up. His arms would not cooperate. He tried to roll over. His legs refused to obey. His pride demanded he continue, but his body had finally reached its limit. Rebecca stood over him, barely winded, her fists still raised and ready. "Stay down," she said, and for the first time, there was genuine concern in her voice. "You fought well. There is no shame in knowing when to stop." But Wrecker was not listening. He could not hear anything over the roaring in his ears, the pounding of his heart, the desperate gasping of his lungs. His vision was starting to tunnel, darkness creeping in from the edges. Through sheer willpower alone, he managed to get one hand under himself. He pushed. His arm trembled with the effort. The crowd held its collective breath. Wrecker the Unbroken would not quit. Could not quit. Even if it killed him, he would get back up. He would keep fighting. Rebecca's fist came down one last time. Wrecker pushed himself up onto his knees, every muscle in his body screaming in protest. Blood dripped from his snout onto the arena floor, each drop creating small crimson pools that reflected the overhead lights. His vision swam, doubled, then slowly merged back into something resembling focus. Rebecca had stepped back, giving him room to rise. A mistake, he thought through the haze of pain and exhaustion. A mistake he would exploit. He had one chance left, one final gambit. Crothians had a technique, rarely used because of how much energy it required, called the Devastation Rush. It was a berserker assault that channeled every remaining ounce of strength into a 5-second window of pure, overwhelming violence. Fighters who used it either won spectacularly or collapsed immediately after. There was no middle ground. Wrecker sucked in a deep breath, tasting his own blood. His vision sharpened with combat-induced adrenaline. Every sound in the arena became crystal clear. He could hear individual voices in the crowd. He could hear Rebecca's steady breathing. He could hear his own hearts hammering against his ribs like war drums. He exploded forward. The Devastation Rush was exactly what its name promised. Wrecker became a whirlwind of claws, fists, elbows, knees, and tail strikes. He attacked from every angle simultaneously, his body moving with a speed and ferocity that seemed impossible for something so large and so exhausted. The air itself seemed to crack and tear around his strikes. Rebecca's eyes widened. This was different. This was dangerous. She blocked a claw strike, dodged a knee, parried an elbow, but there were too many attacks coming too fast. One clawed hand grazed her shoulder, tearing through her training gear and drawing first blood. A tail strike caught her hip, sending her stumbling sideways. A punch she barely deflected still had enough force to numb her forearm. The crowd went absolutely berserk. This was it. This was the Wrecker they knew, the unstoppable force, the living weapon. Wrecker pressed harder, faster, channeling everything he had left into this final assault. His vision was narrowing again, but he did not care. He just needed one clean hit. Just one. A solid connection to that fragile human skull, and this would all be over. He threw a haymaker with his right hand, putting every bit of his remaining strength behind it. The punch came in like a meteor, fast and devastating and absolutely committed. Rebecca dropped straight down. Not stepped back, not dodged to the side. She dropped into a full squat, so low and so fast that Wrecker's punch sailed over her head. His momentum carried him forward, off balance, overextended, completely exposed. Rebecca rose up like a spring releasing, her entire body coiling and then exploding upward. Her fist drove into Vrecker's chin with surgical precision, every ounce of her body weight behind the strike, perfectly timed to meet him as his own momentum brought him down. The sound of the impact echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Vrecker's head snapped back, his four eyes rolled up, his legs gave out completely. He was unconscious before he hit the ground. The fall seemed to happen in slow motion. 600 pounds of Cruthian warrior tipping backward, arms loose, tail limp, crashing onto the arena floor with a thunderous boom that shook the observation booth where I was sitting. The referee rushed in, waving his arms frantically. Knockout, knockout, winner by knockout, Rebecca Torres. The crowd erupted. And I mean erupted. The noise was so loud that the station's structural integrity alarms briefly activated. Half the audience was cheering in stunned disbelief. The other half was either screaming in joy or staring in shocked silence at the impossible thing they had just witnessed. Rebecca stood over Vrecker's unconscious form, breathing hard now, her fist still raised. Then she lowered it slowly, rolled her shoulders, and walked calmly toward her corner as if she had just finished a routine sparring session. The medical team swarmed onto the arena floor, scanners and emergency equipment appearing from everywhere at once. And Vrecker was gone. Lights out. Completely unconscious. The first thing Vrecker became aware of was pain. It was everywhere, a dull throbbing ache that seemed to originate from his entire body simultaneously. His head felt like it had been used as a percussion instrument. His ribs hurt, his jaw hurt, parts of him he did not even know could hurt were sending distress signals to his brain. The second thing he became aware of was the light. Bright, clinical, sterile white light that stabbed into his eyes when he tried to open them. The third thing was a voice. Familiar, amused, trying very hard not to laugh. Oh good, you are awake. Welcome back to the land of the conscious champion. Vrecker managed to crack his eyes open. He was in the medical bay lying on a reinforced bed designed for large species. Various monitoring devices were attached to his chest and head. An IV drip fed something into his arm that was probably responsible for the pleasant numbness competing with the pain. Aurelian medic stood beside the bed, her compound eyes glittering with barely suppressed amusement. Her manipulator arms were updating a data pad, but she kept glancing at Vrecker like he was the funniest thing she had seen all cycle. Vrecker's mouth was dry. His tongue felt thick and clumsy. He worked his jaw, winced at the pain, and managed to croak out a single question. Who won? The medic lost it. She tried to maintain professional composure, really she did, but laughter burst out of her like water from a broken seal. She laughed so hard she had to set down her data pad. Other medical staff in the bay turned to look and several of them started chuckling too. Oh, that is perfect, the medic managed between giggles. That is absolutely perfect. You seriously do not remember? Vrecker's confusion must have shown on his face because the medic took pity on him. She tapped her data pad a few times, and a holoscreen materialized above his bed. Here, she said, fighting down another wave of laughter. Maybe this will help. The holoscreen showed the arena, showed him launching his final desperate assault, showed Rebecca dropping low, showed the uppercut that had turned his lights off, showed him falling like a demolished building. The replay ended with Rebecca standing victorious while he lay unconscious on the arena floor. Vrecker stared at the frozen image for a long moment. His brain, still foggy from the knockout and whatever painkillers were in his system, struggled to process what he was seeing. I lost, he said slowly, as if testing the words. I lost to a human. You did indeed, the medic confirmed, her voice kind despite the lingering amusement. Quite spectacularly, I might add. The fight is already trending across 6 systems. You are famous, just not in the way you probably hoped. Vrecker closed his eyes. He wanted to feel angry, humiliated, destroyed. But mostly he just felt tired and oddly curious. Where is she? He asked. Last I saw, the medic gestured toward another holoscreen that showed the arena's public spaces. Collecting her winnings. 1.5 million credits. Apparently she bet on herself. The screen showed Rebecca at the payment terminal, surrounded by cheering humans and various other beings who had apparently won big by betting on the impossible. She was smiling, shaking hands, looking completely unbothered by the fact that she had just knocked out one of the galaxy's most feared fighters. How? Vrecker asked, more to himself than the medic. How did she do that? The medic pulled up another screen, this one showing Rebecca's registration file. According to her bio, she is a former military combatives instructor from Earth, specialized in something called mixed martial arts. Also has a background in a dozen other human fighting disciplines with names I cannot pronounce: boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling. She scrolled through the list. Apparently on Earth, she is considered quite average for her profession. Average? Wrecker repeated numbly. Turns out humans might be physically weaker than most species, but they have been fighting each other for their entire evolutionary history. They have refined violence into an art form. All that aggression, all that creativity, all those millennia of warfare, distilled into combat techniques that do not rely on raw strength. The medic looked at him with something almost like sympathy. You were not beaten by superior genetics, Vrigar. You were beaten by superior skill. Wrecker lay there, staring at the ceiling, processing this information. Somewhere in the back of his mind, his ego was screaming. But a larger, more honest part of him was experiencing something he had not felt in years. Respect. I want a rematch, he said suddenly. The medic laughed again. Not for at least 3 months. You have 2 cracked ribs, a concussion, a fractured jaw, and enough bruising to paint a small ship. You are going to be here for a while, champion. Wrecker managed a weak smile despite the pain it caused. 3 months then. Tell her. Tell the human. 3 months. And we fight again. Oh, this I have to see, the medic said, shaking her head in amusement. The galaxy is going to lose its mind. On the hollow screen, Rebecca was being interviewed by a sports reporter. The audio was muted, but her body language said everything. Confident, calm, professional. And when the reporter apparently asked if she would fight Wrecker again, she just shrugged and smiled. Wrecker watched her and realized something that should have been obvious from the start. Humans were not weak, they were just underestimated. And that, he now understood, was exactly how they liked it. He closed his eyes and let the painkillers pull him back towards sleep. His last thought before unconsciousness claimed him again was surprisingly cheerful. Next time would be different. Next time he would be ready. Next time he would know what he was facing. Next time. But even through the fog of medication and exhaustion, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a truth he was not quite ready to accept. Next time he would probably lose again. And somehow that thought did not bother him nearly as much as it should have.